Hello, welcome to the first video of 16 Cent Ministries. My wife Louise and I started this ministry, just started this ministry, and this is like our launch, really. And we have a story that God has given us that I think you're going to find really fascinating, educational, and faith-building. Uh, I'm not saying this just because it's ours. You really need to watch all of them. And I think that you will kind of be amazed when this is done to see the different ways that God works. Ways that you probably have never thought of. I certainly never thought of, but I experienced firsthand with God after I made a public decision to trust Him. You're going to have to indulge me, by the way, because I'm not a professional speaker. I I used to speak quite a bit, but only on subjects that I was very familiar with, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable about this, telling this story, but it's a very important story, I think, and God wants us to tell it to as many people as we possibly can. Now, our card, I just want to show you that. Our card is really a card that says 16 cents on top, and glued to it is a dime, a nickel, and a penny. And I'm going to read what it says on the back if you haven't already seen it. A story of salsa, sickness, spare change, plus an encounter with one of God's angels. Now, you may very well be asking yourself right now, what in the world does salsa, sickness, spare change, and an angel have? How did they possibly match up, or how could you possibly make any kind of an intelligent story out of that? But you're going to find out how. And it has to do with the amazing ways that God works, just ways that you'll be amazed after you hear this thing. So it started back in 2008. My background was real estate. I had a real estate development, land development going, and you may remember that the market crashed in '08. And a lot of people suffered. A lot of people lost their homes and all kinds of things. Well, we lost the development that we had, and that was very, very significant to us because it really caused us to lose 95% of our net worth. And so here we were in our early 60s, failure behind us, a very uncertain future ahead of us. What were we going to do? We had to start all over again, just like a young couple might. But we had no alternative. And I want to say that I had been attending a Bible study down in St. Petersburg, Florida. We live in Tarpon Springs, by the way, Florida. It's a Tampa Bay area. But I had been attending this Bible study for quite some time. And when this happened to us, it was a real financial struggle. And I had a very small group of guys, 4 or 5 guys. And I just said one day, I said, look, I just have to say something publicly here. We all believe in God and everything, but somehow I feel like trusting Him is really more important, because if you're going to trust Him, that really means you put everything you have inside that trust with God, everything you have, and let Him guide your life. And that's what I did. I just said, I raised my hand and I said, I'm making a decision to trust God. I don't really feel it from my heart exactly, but I'm just choosing to make that decision. And I hope that He blesses us, stays with us. And I want my faith to grow dramatically. In fact, I even made the comment that I wanted my faith to be like Job's. And but I said, God, please don't allow it to happen to me what you allowed to happen to Job. But I definitely want my faith to increase within you. And He did. He did in amazing ways. Now, after we had got wiped out with the land development, I went into a business that I knew absolutely nothing about, nothing at all. I went into manufacturing a fresh salsa product. Now, I had been making a fresh salsa product a fresh salsa socially. I'd make it at home. We'd take it to parties. It was a mango salsa. People loved it and always said, hey, you should get out and make that, sell it, because people would buy it. And I thought, no, I'm not interested in that. I mean, I'm in real estate and have been for 30 some odd years. So I'm not gonna go into the salsa business. But when we lost everything, I thought, I do have a product people really like and claim they'll buy. I know nothing about the food business, but I'm going to go into it anyway. And probably a good thing that I didn't know anything about it, because if I'd known a lot about it, I probably wouldn't have gone into it. But so I started. I got licensed. I did what I had to do to become legal in the eyes of Florida law, but I didn't have a place really to make it. An authorized licensed facility to make it. And so one day I was driving around town and I thought, I've got to find a place to make this salsa. So I drove around and I looked at two places, and the third place I looked at, was fine. Really, all of them would have worked. None of them had any equipment, and I didn't have any money. So I was saying, why in the world am I doing this? Why am I looking at a place to rent to make salsa when I'm going to have to buy equipment, and I don't really have the money to even pay the rent, much less buy equipment. So I was just, like mad at myself because I decided to do that. Well, as soon as I got in my car and fastened my seatbelt, my cell phone rang. And on the other end of the line was a lady. And she said, is this Todd Salsa? And I said, yes, it is. And she said, but my brother wants to meet with you. I've been trying to reach you for 2 months. And I said, well, what for exactly? And she said, well, he's interested in your salsa. And I said, well, it's interesting that you would call me because I have been looking for a place to make it today. And she said, well, we've got a place to make it. I said, what do you have? And she said, we've got a 4,000 square foot facility, and we have all the equipment that anyone would need to produce almost anything, and especially your salsa. You wouldn't have to buy a single thing. So why don't you come in and talk about it? I said, well, who am I really speaking to? And she said, well, my name is Florinda Williams, and my brother is Louis Pappas. And for those of you who have been around a while, I'm sure you've heard that name. It's a family that goes back. They're restaurateurs. They go back to World War I, literally. And so I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I don't know these people, but they're calling me because Louis, I guess, tasted the salsa somewhere. And so I went in, and I ended up making a deal with him whereby I didn't have to pay any rent. I could use all of his equipment, even use his big refrigerated truck. And all I had to do was make salsa for him to go into a couple of his restaurants. So I did that for several years, probably, I guess, maybe 5 years. And during that time, actually early on, I was able to pick up a distributor. And they had two facilities, one down in South Florida and one up in the Gainesville area, North Florida. And they loved the salsa. They asked me if I would be willing to produce it in their name, and then they'd go out and sell it. And I thought, boy, this is great because I've made it. We're finally going to get out of our financial situation. But that doesn't exactly work that way. The salsa did do fairly well. I mean, we did at least have some money coming in. It wasn't enough. It wasn't really enough to live, but we had something coming in. And I had confidence that it would continue to grow, and it would eventually work out. And it did grow, but we had a lot of ups and downs. We were on a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster. We had customers that would use 500-600 gallons a week come in and say, we're going to start buying this product, and then for whatever reason it didn't go through. So we were very high. This is great. We're going to have a really good client, and then it would fall through. And I say, well, Louise, that's my wife. We said we'd trust God, and we're going to trust God all the way, right to the end, no matter what. Because really, ultimately, who can you trust, really? Even your very best friends, even inadvertently, will let you down from time to time. So God was the only person we could really trust. And so it progressed. I picked up some more clients, but as your volume increases, you have to buy more supplies, and which costs money, and it's like a vicious cycle. I mean, you have to keep coming up with more money, which takes away your ability to live, really, if you want to grow the company. And I just didn't really have that capability, and I knew that I really needed to find a company that could manufacture it and distribute it. And I did, and I'm going to tell you that with the part 2 of this story.